Have you ever been curious about the legal implications of having a website or app? What other legal hassles can you encounter as a user of the World Wide Web? McGill Danielson of Danielson Legal, located in Cambridge, MA, Massachusetts, and Fargo, North Dakota, is our in-studio guest. We'll also be chatting about wearables, security, encryption, as well as maybe some drone talk. And I'm thinking a Tesla will come into the conversation as well. Yes, at the control panel, producer extraordinaire, Mr. Jim Walsh.
Hi.
How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Had plenty of sleep over the weekend, as always.
the weekly update about Jim's sleeping habits. Yeah. And the cats were okay as well?
Oh, the cats were great. My wife is great. My wife had some time off, so she got some laundering done.
Good. Glad to hear it.
So I don't have to turn my underwear inside out today. I'm wearing clean. And
That's a good
Too much information? Okay.
Maybe a little too much information.
Right.
But I appreciate you telling us that anyway.
Yeah, that's good.
So have you ever thought about, if you posted something online or whatever, if there would be any legal ramifications to that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because I know you like to, I won't say you post a lot of things controversial, but you are an opinionated type of person.
Yes, I am a person of many opinions.
So
these are my opinions. If you don't like them, I have others. Groucho Marx line.
That's what we're talking about today a little bit, because I thought this would be fascinating, because I think a lot of people may not realize, if you post something online, whether it's in social media or on a blog or whatever, that maybe there could be some legal ramifications to that. So,
hey, I would think.
Yeah, I would think so too, but I guess we're going to find out. So, McGill, how you doing, man?
Great to be here, Marlo.
Yeah, glad to have you as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your law firm, first of all?
Sure. Well, my law firm is focused primarily on technology companies, and we help them with a variety of issues, focusing on intellectual property and technology law. So what that means is we have a lot of clients that are in the software and computer hardware and software space. We have a lot of clients on the East and West Coast, and we have an office in North Dakota where we help some really cool North Dakota technology companies as well.
Yeah, and what's wonderful about North Dakota, of course, is that we do have a lot of emerging type of technologies, especially in the UAS field. And, of course, I'm guessing that's why you're probably have an office in the Fargo area.
Well, it's a fair guess. I actually have an office in Fargo because I was born and raised there, and it's where I call home. And
well, that's fantastic.
And I'm a big fan of it. I'm very bullish on what's going on in Fargo in the technology sector right now. So there's some really great companies in all areas of technology, and UAS is certainly a big one for Fargo as well as Greater North Dakota, and we're excited to see that take off and get some national attention.
Sure. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but I really want to delve into the social media, blogging aspect of things, and what people on both sides of that, whether you're a website owner or somebody who's just, posting a comment or whatever, what are the ramifications of some of that? So I'm just going to start off, we always laugh about EULAs, end user licensing agreements. And every time I download an app, they always have this thing that is 42 pages long, which I'm sure you probably help craft sometimes.
Very frequently, yes.
Okay. And, some of this stuff that's in some of these EULAs probably would scare most people. But yet nobody reads these things.
Nobody reads them.
Nobody reads them. And a great example of this is Samsung. We were just talking about this here a couple weeks ago. Samsung, as part of their EULA, says that they can listen to, Samsung TV can listen to you legally. Whether you're in your living room or in your conference room or whatever, the TV has the ability to listen to you. But everybody clicks OK on this because they don't read through this. And then they're shocked to find out later that this piece of technology has this capability. So what is your recommendation to people before they check the yes button?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and every few years somebody actually does read a EULA, and then there's a big scandal about what that allows the company that drafted that EULA to do. So these things do make it in the news once in a while, and if somebody is wants to be cautious about what they're putting online and wants to make sure that the company that they're maybe submitting information or content to can't do things with it that they'd like them not to do, then it becomes important to do your best at trying to understand what might be permitted by a EULA that you're agreeing to. And you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer to understand what's in that agreement. And oftentimes, actually, companies these days, especially consumer-facing internet company EULAs, are drafted in a way that are trying to be more common, sort of parlance and understandable to the average person. So there is help there with that, but you can also ask around in user forums or communities or other people who are using the same service that you want to use, and try and get some information from others who may have gone through the same exercise. So there's certainly information out there, and if you're an artist or somebody, a musician who's creating content that you want to be particularly careful about because it may be relevant to your livelihood, then I think you want to be especially wary of signing away rights that might give a company the authority to do things with that you would like them not to do. So there are things that can be done. You have to be careful when you do anything that's contractual, and I think that if you take the appropriate precautions for the things that are important to you, then there is a way to navigate that.
So a person should absolutely read these things, though, correct? I mean, what if you're downloading an app, for example, and the app is from Google? I mean, would you generally agree that the app is probably okay? But on the other hand, if you're downloading something from somebody that maybe, let's say you're downloading a flashlight app, one of our favorite examples here, right? And all of a sudden the thing pops up stating that it wants access to your contacts and it wants to be able to post on social media and all this other stuff. And if you click OK to this, you've just given the rights to this app that's a flashlight app, all this other stuff. To me, that's kind of a warning sign, and maybe I should investigate a little bit more.
Yeah, there's certainly some gotcha situations out there, and one of the advantages of a closed system like the Apple App Store is that they have a vetting process, and they do have rules against app developers doing certain things with their app that would take advantage of people's permission, by downloading that app. So staying away from some of the more suspect app stores is certainly one thing, but reading things is always a great idea. I thought you were going to ask me if I read all of the EULAs that I'm presented with, and the answer to that is absolutely not.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that.
I do not. But if it's I use a lot of services in connection with my business, and I'm careful about that when I sign up for things.
Okay. After the break, everybody, we'll continue our conversation with McGill, and we're going to get into the legal ramifications to posting on social media. So come on back.
Right now, 55.
On Twitter, Facebook, online, and YouTube. supertalk1270.com.
Follow the Guru of Geek at facebook.com/The Tech Ranch or Twitter at Guru of Geek or thetechranch.com. Here again is your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
And we want to thank all of our listeners across the country and around the world who follow us on the Blueberry Network. We're also on the Tech Podcast Network. We're on TuneIn, Roku, iTunes, on Meerkat today. So if you want to see what the studio looks like inside, hop to Meerkat and join us there. We also have our own app, Radio Pup. So those are the ways that you can catch us live, or after the show's over, you can hear the rebroadcast of it. In studio, we have producer extraordinaire Jim Walsh. And we have from Danielson Legal, McGill Danielson. McGill,
hello.
Thanks again for being on the show today. Thanks, Jim, for the sound effects. You're just an amazing, amazing tool to have here in the studio.
What can I tell you?
Yeah. We are talking about legal issues in the internet. We're going to get into a few other things a little bit later in the show as well. But I kind of teased everybody before the break that we're going to get into, what maybe legal ramifications there are for you posting something on a blog or social media. So let's say, for example, Jim didn't agree with something that somebody was posting on a blog.
Gee, when has that ever happened?
Never, I'm sure, Jim. So
yeah.
Is there anything that he needs to be concerned about when he's doing these type of things?
Well, yeah, I mean, generally, you always want to be concerned if you're doing something that might conceivably be illegal. And those can include a number of different things, but if you're just talking about a nice, fair political disagreement or something like that, then there's really nothing to worry about. If you start making threats, bodily harm against somebody, then that becomes a pretty significant problem. So I'd advise everybody to stay away from doing that.
Okay, so it's no different than if I was making a threat to you in person. If I did it online or whatever, it's the same. Has the same issue coming back at you.
Yeah, I mean that's right. If what you do is going to cause someone to reasonably fear for themselves or loved ones, then you're creating some significant risk for yourself. And so as a matter of law, you don't want to do that, and certainly as a matter of good judgment and morals, you probably don't want to do that either.
Sure.
So.
Anything else that you can think of, maybe?
Well, the thing that comes up most frequently is probably posting of content that might have some sort of copyrightable element to it.
Okay.
And that's going to be present anytime you have people that are able to submit audio or pictures or video, and that's becoming increasingly more common. So people want to be careful about what they upload and make sure that they have the right to do that. If they're including songs or something as a part of that, or that they don't own, or they're taking video from a friend, or things of that nature. So anytime you're putting something out there, you want to make sure that you have the right to do that.
That's an issue for us at the station because we post news stories that we get. Now, we subscribe to the Associated Press news service, but even then, when we post a story, we have to properly attribute the source of the story and so on and so forth.
And even the photos and stuff that you use, Jim. I mean, don't you use like Getty's images or something?
We
like
use
that?
Getty. We subscribe to a service called Getty Images.
Right.
And we just all we have to do basically is properly cite them. We cite the fact that it's Getty, and we cite the name of the photographer. Joe Blow / Getty Images is what you'll see under a lot of our photographs on the website.
And I know over the last couple of years too, especially since some of the websites that I deal with now have risen in prominence, I have become much more involved in making sure that our stuff is legal. Yeah.
The company that used to own this radio station, Cumulus, they just got sued by somebody for not properly citing a story on one of their station's websites.
Sure.
It does happen.
It does, and it happens all the time, actually.
It happens more often than we would care to admit.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. So talk about that, McGill. So I have a photo. Let's say I'm posting about a podcast or whatever, right? And I go into Google, I go into images, and I find the exact photo or image that I want to use, and I use that image in my post or on my social media feed or whatever. And, I mean, is there a legal way that I can do that or not?
Yeah, I mean, the common sense approach is to try and see if you can get permission from whoever might own the rights to that photo.
Okay.
So if you're taking it from somebody's website or from their own Twitter feed or elsewhere on social media, then you might want to just ask if you would be okay to post that wherever you want to post it. And they may say yes or they may say no, but either way And beyond that, there's no real significant tricks to it. You just have to make sure that you at least ask, and if you can't get permission, then try not to use it.
So and I'm just you're in the heat of the moment, so to speak. You're at a political rally and you want to post something that's clever or whatever, and you find this image, and I mean, isn't there a way that maybe I could give credit to the person who this photo came from this website or whatever, or is that not legal to do? Yeah,
there's a lot of myths about copyright and what you're allowed to do if you do certain things, and people think if someone posted it on the internet, in the first place, and that's where you got it from, then somehow you have some kind of implied license or something, some other permission to do what you want with that photo, but that's not true, and nor is the notion that merely giving credit to somebody gives you any additional rights. So
really,
yeah, it's actually
because I see that all the time. That's why I'm asking this.
Right, I see that all the time too, and I have to sort of laugh a little bit when I see that, just because it's not really doing anything. I get the sentiment behind it. People are trying to do the right thing and are hoping that they where they otherwise might get in trouble, they won't get in trouble if they put a copyright notice of somebody else, or if they say, I'm not claiming any rights to this. But ultimately, from a legal perspective, that's all just irrelevant. So doing that doesn't save the day. But there are things that you can do if you, and you know, you talked about Jim and the content that they use at this radio station to do broadcasting, and anybody who's in a media company has the advantage of having probably a large corporate structure above them, and that's very sophisticated in making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and so they're very lucky in that. But the average, podcaster working from home doesn't have that, but there are things that they can do to make sure that they're operating within the law as well.
Right. So Jim just went and he just ran this copy of this news story. Do you want to just read it real quick, Jim? Or?
Let me see. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. Since you're the news guy here, I'll let you just read that. How's that sound?
This is from a broadcast industry website called allaccess.com.
Okay.
Joel Denver, I'm not sure who wrote the story, but a photographer named Richard Harbus has sued Cumulus Media in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, alleging that WABC, which is a Cumulus talk station in New York, it's one of the big stations in America, actually, that WABC infringed the copyright of this photographer on a photograph of Coach Derek Fisher of the New York Knicks.
Okay.
The infringement came in February after Derek Fisher was fired by the Knicks. The photo had been licensed to the New York Daily News, a local newspaper, and Cumulus allegedly posted the same photo without license or credit alongside an article about the hiring of the interim coach. Harbus is asking for statutory damages of $150,000 plus attorney's fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So that's just one, I think, of many examples that go on all the time right now. So what about if I'm reposting something that somebody put out there? I mean, if there's a photograph attached to that and that person didn't originally get permission. Now, am I liable for reposting something that doesn't originally have permission in the first place?
Yes. I mean,
oh my goodness.
The stream of liability doesn't end if someone before you did something wrong. So, both parties in that case would be on the hook
or 5,000 parties or whatever the case would be.
Exactly. And you see that all the time. I mean, you look at anti-piracy efforts aimed at BitTorrent. And, I read actually just the other day that there's one company in the adult industry that's filing like 3 lawsuits a day against people who are downloading their content from torrent networks.
Sure.
And they're all downloading, thousands of people are downloading the same thing. So, but lots of lawsuits are coming out of that.
So I'm on a social media feed. Jim posts something that he doesn't have permission to post. I mean, that photo, he doesn't have credit for it or whatever, right?
Photo of the coach of some basketball team getting
just like
fired.
this right here, right?
Okay.
So if I were to repost this story that WABC had put out right here, I mean, I could potentially be liable here too, is what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's unfortunately the domino effect that can happen with copyright liability is that every new person who, posts anew is potentially going to be liable.
Realistically, though, aren't they going to go where the money is?
Realistically, probably yes. And there's always a risk element to doing anything that might have liability.
Right.
To kind of assess.
Well, I think you've startled a few people today already, including myself. So after the break, everybody, we will continue our conversation with McGill on the legal ramifications of being online. So come on back.
Right now, 55.
The Red River Farm Network. Ag News is here on Super Talk 1270.
We're back to the Tech Ranch. Stream this program now at supertalk1270.com. Here is your guru of geek, Marlo Anderson.
And in studio from Danielson Legal, McGill Danielson, and we've been talking about legal ramifications for you being online. Generally, this would be our Halloween show because we like to scare people, but we've been doing a pretty good job of that today already. And you kind of set me back in my seat a little bit just a little bit ago because I really thought that if I gave proper credit on photos, on blogs and social media, that I was okay. And you just told me that's not the case.
It ain't necessarily so.
So where does the Digital Millennial Copyright Act fall into all of this?
Well, the DMCA is very relevant to a lot of things that happen online because it provides for a company like Facebook or like YouTube or Twitter or anybody else. It provides with them a measure of protection from being responsible for copyright infringing activities of their users. If it were not for the DMCA, then by merely hosting a website that one of their users ends up posting something that is infringing on there, then they would be liable. So it's important in that it allows a company like YouTube or Facebook or anybody else who allows users to post content to do what they're doing and avoid significant risk for liability. So that's the sort of the most critical part of it for users. It means that there's a bit of a process. If you're posting something that you do have the right to post, and then somebody wants to complain about that, then there's this sort of notice and counter notice procedure that the DMCA prescribes. So if you were in the business of, if you were a musician or a video producer, and you had stuff online that somebody's complaining about, then the DMCA kind of gives rules of the road to how you navigate a dispute like that with a third party like YouTube or another company that's hosting content.
So I've run into videos like this, and I'm sure most people who have, when you're on YouTube or Vimeo or any of those video websites where you're watching, let's say, a slideshow or whatever, and the person who created the slideshow used some type of popular music or whatever on there, and there is no music. They have filled it in with something else or whatever, and there is something across the bottom that talks about the Digital Copyright Act. So that's what's going on. I mean, I'm assuming that YouTube has some type of filter in place that goes through videos and says, hey, Blake Shelton shouldn't be playing in this song or in this slideshow, so they remove the audio from it. Am I correct in that assumption? Or?
Yeah, so my understanding is that the way YouTube works is they actually have a licensing agreement with some of the primary music publishers out there and some of the record labels that own the rights to the recordings that allows them to distribute content that has music in it, and then pay a licensing royalty on the back end.
Oh, okay.
That comes from the advertising dollars that YouTube creates. So for a lot of music that is on YouTube, YouTube actually has secured the right to continue to publish the works that have been submitted by people that uses that music. Now that doesn't cover all music and certainly not all content. So YouTube certainly they get, I think, 1 million takedown notices a day from content owners who do not have any agreements with YouTube and who want their stuff taken down. And anybody who is taking on and publishing content from users of their site will have a similar experience where they have many takedown requests come in each day, as our clients and many other companies that we're aware of have had that experience.
And I know that in recent light of Prince's death, for example, and that's just bringing top of mind awareness to me right now. He did not have an agreement with YouTube, so anything that you had put up, whether it was a slideshow or whatever, with music by Prince, would automatically be taken down. So that's just one example of that. Yep. I'm sure there's, like you said, 1 million of them a day that we could give examples of here. So
and there's there's all. And when you talk about video content, then you're talking about things from movies and TV shows, all sorts of areas other than music, and so that's why YouTube gets so many of these requests, because there's so many different types of content that can appear in the videos that people upload there, whether it's images, music, or video content.
So let's go back to posting for a little bit now. On a lot of websites, although not as much as it used to be, but you had the ability to post anonymously. Let's say you were to do something derogatory, say something derogatory to somebody else, whatever it would be, but you feel that you're protected because of the anonymous posture that you've taken for posting on that website. Is it possible for me, let's say I'm the one that's being accused of something or something that's defamatory towards myself, is it possible for me to sue the website to get your information?
Very good question. The answer generally is yes. And the first place you'd look, even before whether or not a court would allow you to request the identity of someone who's harmed you is the terms and conditions for the website that you're on. So most of the EULAs that we were talking about earlier for sites like Facebook or Twitter are going to have some language in there that says that if you do something unlawful, that then they have the right to release information about what you've done and or your identity to law enforcement officials or to someone who's requested that information in a legal proceeding. So typically, that language will be in just about any agreement that is online, and you'll be subject to that, even if you're posting anonymously and haven't necessarily signed up for an account. If you're using the site, then you will be deemed to have agreed to those terms.
I see. Interesting. So anything else in that realm, posting or whatever, that maybe a person should be on the lookout for, or just be careful that you're not breaking any laws?
I guess as we've talked about, there's a lot more risk out there than I think people generally are aware of, and so I think the average person probably is doing something that technically is copyright infringement or some other sort of IP infringement.
I would agree with that
at some point, but it's kind of like it's not a great analogy, but lots of people jaywalk or do other things
sure.
that are technically illegal all of the time, and that doesn't necessarily mean that our jails are filled with people who are violating those laws. But I do think that you have to be careful if you're doing something that's part of a business endeavor. And as Jim mentioned, the lawsuits tend to be attracted by the people that have the money to pay judgments. And so as soon as you have a business out of your podcast or start making money off of your video works that you're uploading to YouTube or anything of that nature, then you, I think, have a heightened risk of attracting some sort of attention by the owners of the copyrighted material you may not have the rights to. So for anybody who's doing a business that involves content that may be subject to copyright law, I would say you want to be especially vigilant. And if you're doing something in technology or that involves content, then you want to really ask yourself if you've had an honest conversation about whether you're doing everything you can to stay out of trouble there.
So I know we were talking about the photo side of things, but what about written content? I mean, if I were to copy a paragraph from, let's say, a post that you put out somewhere and gave you credit for it, I mean, actually provide a link back to the source page and all this other stuff, do I have to go through the process of asking your permission to do that?
So the default answer is yes, you would have to. But this might be a good time to talk about the concept of fair use, which does allow you to theoretically use certain content in ways that are prescribed in the law to be acceptable. And one of those would be if you were criticizing or commenting on something that I had written and you wanted to show a quote from me to make your point, then theoretically that would be an acceptable fair use of content. Now, if you just take a 2,000-word article that I wrote and copied the whole thing wholesale and put it on your website because you think it's useful and people want to download it and you want people to come to your website, then that's not something that would be likely to be deemed fair use. And
so I see a lot of these type of websites that aggregate RSS feeds, the real simple syndication feeds, and you see that in WordPress a lot, where let's say my theme is whatever topic, one of the political candidates or whatever. So they're aggregating this information. They don't write anything. They are just bringing this information in, making it look like, it's their website. They still probably give full credit, full disclosure to you as the content creator, but the person never ends up at your website. So there's no way for you personally to monetize what you have done because you're doing the work for somebody else. I'm assuming that that's not a proper way to do things.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. This issue of using RSS feeds for podcasts or similar content has actually been becoming increasingly more talked about, and there are some interesting twists and turns there that we can catch after the break here.
All right, we'll do that. Right after the break, we'll continue this conversation.
Right now, 61.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on Super Talk 1270.
Follow the Guru of Geek everywhere he goes. Post your comments or questions at thetechranch.com. Once again, your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
And if you're just joining us, McGill Danielson of Danielson Legal is in studio. We've been talking about the legal ramifications of posting, using photographs, all this good stuff online. I'm not sure we're even going to get to the other stuff today because this has been absolutely fascinating. But let's just
have him back.
Yeah, we need to have you back. There's no doubt about it.
Happy to do it.
So let's just pick up where we left off.
Yeah, so we were talking about RSS feeds
Right.
and this idea that people can take advantage of RSS feeds and the content that is included in that or linked through that data into another site that maybe has some other person's ads or brand or what have you on there. And that's been a hot issue. There hasn't been a terrible amount of guidance from the courts on the idea that using an RSS feed in a particular way is problematic and not using it in another way is not problematic. So we may be a little ways away from clarity there, but I think that every company that has an RSS feed and doesn't want it taken advantage of in certain ways, but does want people to use it in other ways. Oftentimes you're sort of worried about an aggregator taking that data and then making it available on their site that people are going to access instead of your site, and then get the advantage of a lot of eyeballs and traffic that you might have otherwise gotten when the intention of an RSS feed typically is for an individual user to take advantage
Right.
of it within a browser or reader. So what you look at in that case is how much content is in the RSS feed, what kind of terms and conditions can you get around the use of that feed, and how do you make that apply to the people that are going to use it? Because if in order to use that RSS feed, someone has to agree to your terms and conditions, and then they violate that by using your feed as part of an aggregation service, then you may have some ability to stop them based on those terms and conditions. There are technological measures as well to try and determine where an RSS access is coming from and sort of limit access to your feed technologically. So there are a few things out there, depending on what exactly people are doing with the feed, that could potentially be of use to somebody who's trying to prevent someone from taking advantage of it in a way that's not acceptable to them.
Okay. So is there anything else? I actually want to get on to one other topic here because you're the owner of one of these cool cars that we have to talk about. But is there anything maybe that you can just kind of summarize what a person that's a user of social media can use to maybe, just make sure that you're protecting yourself a little bit when you're online? There's resources out there for those who want to learn more, and I certainly encourage everybody to learn as much as they can about the rights they might have. A nonprofit organization I'm a big fan of is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is at EFF.org, and they spend a lot of time and energy on trying to make sure that that internet users' rights are not being taken advantage of by the government or by large companies, and so they'll occasionally sue for those rights, and they'll also post a lot of information about examples where people's rights have been taken advantage of. So I would encourage people to visit that website among others that are out there. Okay, very good. So let's get to the fun stuff now a little bit. So
Okay.
you're an owner of what kind of vehicle?
So I have a 2016 Model S Tesla 90D,
Okay.
which is sort of their flagship electronic vehicle that has now been around for I think 4 years now.
Right.
2012 was the first year that they came out, and I've had that for a bit over a month now, and it's been a pleasure to be part of the electric car revolution, particularly in North Dakota, where there's not a lot of folks who have that vehicle.
Right. So you've had it for about a month, so you haven't had the opportunity to drive it on snow or anything like that yet, correct?
Correct, but
Okay.
I'm excited and looking forward to that. They
Okay.
say it's a very good a winter vehicle, and I'm inclined to believe it.
So this thing has a little power, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, just the
Zero to 60 in...
mine does 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds.
Oh, my goodness.
I have the slower of the 2 models. So,
so the faster one goes how fast?
0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds.
Wow.
Which is, I believe it's faster than a stock Porsche GT3.
Okay.
Which is a very fast car.
So on a full charge, what kind of range do you have with this?
So the rated range on the largest capacity Model S, which is a 90 kilowatt hour battery, is about 290 miles.
Okay.
And what's interesting about an electric vehicle, or really any vehicle, but you notice it more with electric vehicle, is the relevance of the environment to how much mileage you get, because the wind speed and wind direction, the temperature of the outside environment, and the weather conditions will have a pretty significant impact on how much mileage you get. So, you could get as little as 190 or 200 miles of range if you had the wind going 40 miles an hour against you the whole way, or it was a cold day and your battery's going to be challenged by that. Right.
Interesting. So, of course, the big thing to me is that last summer, I think it was, Tesla started introducing firmware upgrades. Although you probably didn't have this, yours probably came with this, where some technologies like lane keeping and that type of thing were built into the car. So have you used the lane keeping feature of your Tesla?
I have indeed, yeah, and I think it's... So
why don't you explain to everybody what lane keeping is?
So the technology that Tesla calls autopilot in their vehicles basically uses sensors around the vehicle and markings on the road when you're going over 50 miles an hour in order to keep you within the lanes. And so it allows you to basically drive without touching the steering wheel, so long as there are adequate markings on the road, which on the highways generally, pretty much everywhere. So it's very similar. In fact, the way that it's triggered in a Tesla is that you use the same control as the cruise control. So it's sort of you pull the lever once to do regular cruise control, which will just maintain your speed, and you do it twice to turn on the autopilot, which will maintain your speed and keep you within the lane that you're in. And then it does give you prompts every 20 minutes or so to make sure that you're still alive, and you have to kind of touch the steering wheel.
Oh, you do? Okay, well, that's
so
cool.
It's not completely, and that's probably a sort of a liability issue for them to make sure that they're trying at least to make sure that people aren't just putting it on autopilot and going to sleep.
So on the legal side of this now, in our state of North Dakota and in many states across the country, it's illegal to be texting while you're driving. Are you actually legal to text while you're driving while the car's in autopilot?
That's a good question, and I can't say that I've looked up the answer to that just because it's not an area of law that I do a lot of work in. But the anti-texting laws in North Dakota are about distracted driving. So when you're doing things that could be texting, but other things as well, you can be cited for distracted driving. So I would have to guess that using the autopilot feature is something that if you do things that are distracting to you while it's working, you're going to be in trouble. But if you're actually watching the road like you would while you're normally driving and being careful to take any precautions necessary to keep yourself out of trouble, then you're probably going to be within the law in that point. But that's not something that I've researched to know the answer to definitively.
So you have the ability to be in cruise control or autopilot. What do you prefer?
That's a good question. I've only used autopilot on a trip maybe once or twice, just because I haven't done a lot of long distance driving with the car yet. But I will say that it's it is a convenience to use the autopilot and just have sort of a minimal amount of things that you need to keep track of in order to safely drive your vehicle. So I enjoy it. Who knows if I would use it all the time, but I do think people will, in the same way they acclimated to cruise control, I think they'll acclimate to these autopilot features.
I know occasionally I'll rent a car or whatever, and you just don't even think about it, but you end up with a car that doesn't have cruise control in it. And it's like, oh my goodness, how did we drive before we had cruise control? I actually think people are going to say the same thing about autopilot and autonomous vehicles in the future.
Yeah.
You'll just get used to it and not know how in the world people even drove long distances. I mean, my goodness, having to steer this thing
Like
for hundreds of
microwave
miles.
ovens.
Yeah. It's just amazing to me. So when you're in autopilot mode, do you just? Is it better to have a conversation with somebody when you're in that mode, or?
I don't know. I was alone when I used it, so I haven't tried that out. But yeah, I mean, it's just basically the same thing as cruise control. It's one less more.
Miguel, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. You need to come back, don't you think, Jim?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to have you back. So until next week, everybody, take care.